everybody. Welcome to the CEO Sports Show for August 29th, 2025. My name is Kris Kretschman. I am your host. Happy Friday, everybody. I want to start off by saying that the college football season is here. I'm excited about it. We could talk about some of the college football matchups, but I do have my Clemson LSU preview on the channel. Please make sure to go check that out. I have my Ohio State Texas preview on the channel, which is why we missed our show yesterday, because I was up to the wire with that Ohio State Texas preview. But it is a fantastic breakdown. I think I did a really good job with it. Put a lot of hours into it, and I think you guys will thoroughly enjoy that video. We had maybe the biggest trade that the NFL has seen in the past, I don't know, 10 years, probably. I guess you could say that, right? I think it's up there. It's been a long time since we've seen a trade this big. I'm going to attack this from, I want to talk about the trade, and then I want to talk about both teams when it comes to this trade. So those are going to be our three segments for the show. We're going to talk about the trade. We're going to talk about what happens with both teams because of this trade. But let me start off with the trade in general. And let me just start off by calling out some hypocrisy. If the Cowboys would have signed Micah Parsons to a $47 million contract, are you sitting here and telling me that there's not going to be pundits and other fan bases? Ha ha! He signed Micah Parsons to $47 million. They overpaid him. But when it's the Green Bay Packers, they fleeced the Cowboys, even though they gave up 2 first-round picks. Again, $47 million a year, which resets the market for that position or for non-quarterbacks by $6 million annually. And they gave up Kenny Clark, who is a very good player. They gave up a lot to get Micah Parsons. Now, Micah Parsons is the best defensive player in the league. That's what I truly believe that. He's an outstanding football player. He's one of the very best in the league. But to act like not just Micah Parsons, but anybody in the NFL is untradeable, that's a lie. That is a lie. Everybody is tradable for the right price. Even Patrick Mahomes, even Josh Allen, even Lamar Jackson. Because if a team went to the Kansas City Chiefs and said, we'll give you 10 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks, they're going to take that trade. Everybody has a price tag. Everybody is tradable in the NFL. And that's how the Cowboys moved with the Micah Parsons situation. You can wonder if they got the right compensation. I think they could have gotten more. With how desperate the Green Bay Packers were, they were desperate for Micah Parsons. And this is a big move that Green Bay made. And we'll see how it works out for them. But they were desperate to bring Micah Parsons onto their football team. I would have said, okay, give us a third for next year as well. They traded their third for George Pickens. We'll see what happens there. George Pickens becomes a great player. That's another topic for another day. Give us a third-round pick. Give us a third-round pick in 2028. They could have gotten more, but 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark is pretty fine. I guess you could say that. It's above average compensation for Micah Parsons. Average to above average, right? It's not a complete fleece of the Green Bay Packers. But I think, and we'll get into this from the Cowboys, because I just want to talk about the trade for a bit. This is a decision that the Cowboys made because they were done with Micah Parsons. I don't think that this is a decision that they made because they looked at it and said, okay, we are now going to move in a different direction and rebuild our organization. Because if they were having these discussions in early March, they would have traded him and gotten a first-round pick this year and for next year. And they probably would have had more people at the table trying to trade for Micah Parsons. But they got to a point where they were done with Micah Parsons. They didn't like the fact that Micah Parsons was handling himself the way that he handled himself in these contract negotiations. Everybody had all this stuff to say about Jerry Jones. But my thing, I raised my hand and I'm just like, does Micah Parsons get no blame in this for the way he handled this whole thing? When you're a football player, you should not be going into offices and negotiating contracts with an owner. That's not what you should do. And when you are in a contract negotiations, you should not be like, oh, let me go to training camp, even though they haven't signed me yet. I should be holding out. I think if Micah Parsons held out and just stayed silent, he would have gotten a deal done in Dallas. Now he ends up going to Green Bay and he ends up getting paid $47 million a year. So maybe that's the best for him. And maybe he made out with what he wanted to make out with, which is getting paid as the top non-quarterback by $6 million annually per year. That is insane. But I can we just talk about the Packers side of this? And I'm going to talk about what this means for their Super Bowl chances and all that. Is nobody going to raise their hand and say, hey, maybe 2 first-round picks, Kenny Clark, and $47 million a year is a lot for Micah Parsons? Like, they're taking on risk here as well, because the Cowboys have had Micah Parsons. They've had the top offense in the league in 2023. They were the best offense in football. They had Micah Parsons on that defense, and they lost in the first round of the playoffs. I don't think that the Green Bay Packers are going to be the best offense in football. I think their defense will be a little better. Sure, like obviously a lot better now that they added Micah Parsons. But you have to ask yourself, okay, Dallas wasn't winning with Micah Parsons. It's not a guarantee that the Green Bay Packers are going to get Micah Parsons and all of a sudden they're the best team in the NFC, because I just don't think that's the case. I don't think that this move puts them over the top. I don't think that they were a Micah Parsons away from being a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I still think that they're not even the best team in their division. They might not even be the 3rd best team in their division. But that, again, we're going to talk about that later on in the episode. But what I'm trying to say is, let's not act like Green Bay isn't taking on a lot of risk with Micah Parsons. Because ask yourself this question. Jerry Jones pays everybody. The Cowboys pay everybody. They paid Ezekiel Elliott when Ezekiel Elliott was doing the stuff that he did, going to Cabo and doing what he did. Why didn't they pay Micah Parsons? And this is nothing that has not been reported. This is nothing that's new. They had contention with Micah Parsons. They didn't like the way Micah Parsons handled himself. They didn't like the fact that he didn't show up to OTAs, going all the way back from his rookie offseason. So like not his rookie offseason, but like going into his second year, he did not go to OTAs. They didn't like the fact that he wasn't a great leader. They didn't like the fact that he wasn't the type of guy that would go into meetings and try and get better from the mental side of the game, that he relied more on his physical talent than, hey, let me try and be a better football player from the mental side of things. I think people are looking at this from one side of the spectrum and saying, Cowboys, you traded your best player. Even though if they would have signed him to $47 million, you overpaid for him. He can't play the run. He's not a top 5 defensive end in the league. But now he's a future Hall of Famer, and the weaknesses in his game, they aren't there anymore. Now, I'm not going to say that Micah Parsons isn't amazing. He is. But like, let's call a spade here, and let's call it the hypocrisies, because if Dallas would have signed Micah Parsons to even the contract that they would have signed him to, which is resetting the market, $42 million a year, there'd be people out there, you can't sign him to that much money. He can't play the run, man. He can't do that. He's bad in run defense. Because I've been hearing that for 4 years. I've been hearing how overrated Micah Parsons is for 4 years. I've been hearing that. And I've been telling people, you're silly. And now all of a sudden, Micah Parsons, best defensive player in football. I've been saying that for years. That's the way I feel. And my opinion doesn't change. But don't let your opinion change just because you don't like the Cowboys. And now he's not on the Cowboys anymore. So now you're allowed to acknowledge how great he is. It's complete and utter hypocrisy. But the Packers are taking on risk here. The Cowboys are taking on risk. Both sides are taking on a risk. And we'll see who wins this deal. Because if the Packers don't win a Super Bowl with Micah Parsons and the Cowboys become a better football team, let's just say the Cowboys win a Super Bowl because of all the moves they're able to make because they traded Micah Parsons. Are we going to say that they didn't win the trade? Is this just about adding players that are going to be really good for a player that's going to be really good for your defense? Or is this about winning games? Because I think the Cowboys are looking at this and say, hey, we have an opportunity to build a really, really good defense over the next few years here. And we'll talk about this from the Cowboys side of things. Let's talk about it. Obviously, the Cowboys, they traded Micah Parsons. Got it. But I want people to look at the trade like this. They traded Micah Parsons. They got in return Kenny Clark. Obviously, Micah Parsons is a much better player than Kenny Clark. Kenny Clark's still a really good football player. They improved their interior defensive line, no doubt about it. Their interior defensive line, now you could talk about them as a fringe top 10 unit, like outside of the top 10, like top 15 for sure now. And they were not that before Kenny Clark. Their one technique nose tackle, that was honestly the worst in football. Now you add a really, really good nose tackle to your defense, right? So you improve in a certain area of your defense. But now going forward, you don't have to pay Micah Parsons the money that you're going to pay him. You have cap flexibility. So this is all about execution, by the way, at the end of the day. If the Cowboys execute this properly, they have the potential to really improve their football team. But again, it's about execution. Because if they don't execute this properly, then there's going to be those trade graphics where people say, oh, the Cowboys drafted 2 first-round busts and they got Kenny Clark, who wasn't that good for them, just saying hypothetically. And the Packers, they got Micah Parsons in return, and they won a Super Bowl. I kind of think people are going the best case scenario in that situation, right, for the Packers, and not looking at it like, hey, maybe this actually might work out for the Cowboys. Look at some of the best defenses over the last 2 years, right? The Eagles in 2024. What did the Eagles do in the offseason of 2024, right? They were one of the worst defenses in football in 2023. I don't have to tell you that. Eagles fans will tell you that. So how did they go about improving their defense? They drafted the 2 corners, Mitchell, DeJean. But not only did they draft the 2 corners, but they added Zach Bond, who obviously played at a much higher level for them than they originally expected. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was a guy who was a big-time contributor for them. They added 4 players to their defense, and that completely changed their defense, along with the coordinator change of Vic Fangio. But I think Matt Eberflus is a damn good defensive coordinator. There's a reason why he was a head coach in the NFL. You could say what you want about him as an NFL head coach, but why did he get that job in the first place? Because he was a really damn good defensive coordinator. So can the Cowboys, over the next 2 drafts, add 4 players to that defense? They could. They could absolutely do that. So instead of paying Micah Parsons, you now have the opportunity to add 4 first-round picks to that defense. And the money that you are going to spend towards Micah Parsons, you can use that money to improve that defense. You can go add 6, 7 guys to this defense that you didn't have previously. You can now extend Tyler Smith. You can now extend Deron Bland. Not saying they wouldn't have been able to do those 2 things previously, but they can do that now and not sleep or sleep well at night, is what I say. They can also extend George Pickens, which, by the way, David Mulugheta and Jerry Jones, they are not at odds with each other. They don't hate each other. They know it's business. And if George Pickens wants to stay with the Dallas Cowboys, which I believe he wants to, and I believe the Cowboys are going to want George Pickens, because ever since George Pickens has been with the Dallas Cowboys, he has done everything that he could possibly do to show that he is not a problem. And I think they end up extending him. So you can extend Tyler Smith, Deron Bland, George Pickens, right? Not only that, you can go out there and sign a bunch of players to add to that defense on top of 4 first-round picks in the next 2 years. Even if the Packers are as good as people think they are, and they end up drafting in the top, in the back half of the first round, in the late 20s, that's still 2 first-round picks that you can add to your defense. Yeah, maybe they're not Micah Parsons. Actually, I would actually bet that they're probably not Micah Parsons, right? But they're still really good players that can contribute to your defense and make an impact for your defense, on top of the 2 first-round picks that they already have, on top of the cap space to go out there and make moves and have flexibility, on top of the fact that they can re-sign the really good players that they have. I don't think that this means that the Cowboys aren't going to be a good team this year. I still think the Cowboys are going to be a good team. I actually think when you look at their roster right now and compare it to what it was last season, they're a better football team. Like this offseason, what did they lose? They lost, some of the solid players that they had previously that other teams, paid more than the Cowboys are willing to pay. They traded Micah Parsons. That's a big loss. He's the best defensive player in football. Not trying to say otherwise, but they added Kenny Clark, right? They added George Pickens. Those are 2 gigantic moves. Dante Fowler, they added him. They added Donovan Ezaraku through the draft. He's a pass rusher that was really good in college. We'll see what happens on the NFL level. They added Tyler Booker on the offensive line. They added a bunch of linebackers. I'm not under the assumption that the Cowboys are going to be a bad football team this year because they traded Micah Parsons. I just don't think that. I still think they have one of the best offenses in the league. And when you look at their offensive personnel over the next few years, you talk about Dak Prescott, who's under contract for the next 4 years. I know everybody has this weird fascination and kink about moving on from Dak Prescott, but I'm telling you, he's under contract for the next 4 years and they're paying him a lot of money and it's very hard to get out of that contract. And on top of the fact that like Dak is a very good quarterback. So it's not the worst thing in the world to have a very good quarterback, but they have, their young offensive line, BB as the center, Tyler Smith as the left guard. Tyler Smith to me is the best guard in football. Cooper Beebe is one of the better young offensive linemen in the league. We'll see what happens with Tyler Booker. Terrence Steele, he's an average at best right tackle. Tyler Guyton, we'll see what happens there. There's a lot of really positive reports coming out of training camp about him. Vach Lombardi, somebody that I highly respect, critical of Tyler Guyton at this time last year. He has done a complete 180 on Tyler Guyton. So, when you look at this offense, they're pretty much set for the next 4 years here if they re-sign George Pickens. Obviously, they could still make some additions to that side of the ball, right? Obviously, they need a running back. We'll see if maybe Jadon Blue is really good. Maybe Phil Maffa could be really good for them. Maybe. Again, still, if you want to look at what they have in that room so far, they probably need to add another player to that room. It's just the way it is. So I look at this from the Cowboys side and I'm saying, let's see how this plays out, because they have an opportunity, if they execute properly, to be able to put themselves in a position to where they may have a better team than they would have had originally with Micah Parsons. Because to me, the Cowboys defense has been good over the past few years because they had the best defensive player in football, and he's raised the ceiling of that defense as much as they did, which is why, when people say, well, look at their EPA per play when Micah Parsons isn't on the field. Well, yeah, the reason why is because they built that defense and they said, hey, Micah Parsons, you are going to have to significantly elevate us. But when I look at their defense, you look at their defensive line now, I mean, their starters, Dante Fowler was a starting defensive end for a team that made the conference championship last year. But that's not a fantasy, that's a fact. Kenny Clark's a really good defensive tackle. Oso Odigizua is a really good defensive tackle. And then we'll see what they do opposite of Dante Fowler, whether it's Donovan Ezaraku or whether it's Marshawn Nealon or whether it's one of those guys, right? We'll see what happens there. But I don't think it's fair to say that just because they traded him, that they're not going to be good this year. Because I do think that there are still some very high highs with this football team. And now that they added a nose tackle, a legitimate nose tackle, I think that is huge for them. Now, you wanted it to be at a lesser cost than trading Micah Parsons. But again, when we just look at this team as a whole, I still like their linebacker unit. They have some young players and some proven players on that unit. Their secondary, they still have Deron Bland. They still have Trayvon Diggs. They drafted Savone Revel in the 3rd round that people looked at as a first-round talent. Safeties are probably going to have to improve there. But guess what? They now have all the money in the world and cap flexibility to be able to do that in the offseason. That's what I'm saying. Whatever flaws the Cowboys have on this roster, I don't think they have a bad defensive end room. That defensive end room, even though they don't have Micah Parsons in it anymore, still there's some talented players in that room. And when you look at the flaws that they have with their team, right, they're going to have to try and find a slot corner in these upcoming years. They might have one on their team already with Deron Bland. Maybe they like what Trayvon Diggs does this year and they want to keep him. Deron Bland, obviously we know what he is. Savone Revel, he is a highly touted rookie. If he's as good as they think he is, now you look at your secondary, it's still a pretty young secondary. You look at your defensive line, you can improve that. If you don't like the production that you're going to get from, the guys that you have, guess what you can do? You can go out there and you can sign guys to play on your defensive line. If you don't like your safety room, guess what? You can sign safeties. And you have 4 first-round picks over the next 2 years. And by the way, that 2027 draft, Look at that 2027 draft. You're talking about Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams. You're talking about Dylan Stewart, Colin Simmons. These are just the non-quarterbacks, by the way. You get Bryant Wesco, the wide receiver from Clemson. You look at guys like Ryan Wingo, who could potentially break out. Like, the 2027 draft class has the potential to be one of the very best of all time. And the Cowboys now have 2 first-round picks in that draft. And if they're as bad as people say they are in 2027 or 2026, right? They're going to have a high pick in that draft. They might be able to draft Jeremiah Smith. They might be able to draft Arch Manning. They might be able to draft Dylan Stewart or Colin Simmons. You never know what happens. And also, you never know what happens with Green Bay. There's no guaranteeing. Like, look, the Cowboys had Micah Parsons this year. They won 7 games. Why'd they win 7 games? Because Dak didn't play in a lot of those games. Like, the NFL, you don't know what can happen in the NFL. Yeah, maybe those picks are in the late 20s, but maybe they're not. And maybe they are drafting in the first half of the first round with those picks. I'm not as high on Green Bay as everybody else is, even with this Micah Parsons trade. And we'll talk about it, the Green Bay Packers now. I don't love this trade for the Green Bay Packers because, again, people are just looking. They gave up 2 first-round picks and they gave up Kenny Clark for Micah Parsons, and not taking into account that they gave up 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark and $47 million and whatever free agents they would have been able to sign with that $47 million per year to go get Micah Parsons. Was their defense of Micah Parsons away and removing Kenny Clark from that defense? Were they that close away from being an elite unit? I don't think Green Bay was a Micah Parsons away from winning a Super Bowl. So now that they have Micah Parsons, I'm not going to say that they are a Super Bowl contender. Let's look at the NFC, for example, and go through some of these teams. Are they better than Philadelphia? No. Are they better than Minnesota? I don't believe so. We'll have to wait and see with J.J. McCarthy. Are they better than the Rams? No. Are they better than the Lions? I'm not sure. Are they better than the Buccaneers? No. Like, are they better than the Cowboys? We'll wait and see on that one. Are they better than the Washington Commanders? We'll wait and see on that one. I still think that there are 3 teams that are clearly better than Green Bay. I think that the Eagles, the Rams, and the Vikings are clearly better than Green Bay. No doubt about it. This does not put them, to me, in the top 3 of NFC and contenders. So if they're not in the top 3 of NFC and contenders, I don't feel good saying that this is a Super Bowl contender. Because, okay, you're not a top 3 team in your conference. You have to still make it out of your conference. And that's not even to take into consideration the teams on the AFC side when you talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, the Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills. Let's power rank the teams in the NFL. I think when you look at the power rankings, I would go to, because they won the Super Bowl last year. We'll see what they do this year. Eagles, Chiefs, Rams, Eagles, Chiefs, Ravens, Rams, Bills, Vikings, and then maybe the Packers are 7th. Maybe. But again, that's a maybe. Because I don't think they're better than Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is a better football team than them. I'm not 100% sold on the Green Bay Packers winning a Super Bowl in these next few years here with Micah Parsons. And if you don't win a Super Bowl with Micah Parsons and you gave up what you gave up to get him, it's a dangerous move for the Green Bay Packers. They were desperate here, and the desperation showed, not just with the trade compensation that they gave up to get Micah Parsons. You reset the market by $6 million annually to go get him. And again, I'll take the words. I think Micah Parsons is the best defensive player in football. Again, my evaluation does not change just because he changes teams. But let's go off other people's evaluations. I'm told he wasn't good against the run. So they just paid $47 million a year for somebody who's not good against the run. Because that was, when I was telling people Micah Parsons is the best defensive player in football, everyone was telling me, can't play the run, man. Can't play the run. Nope. So now all of a sudden we value run defense more than we value pass rush production. That's crazy to me. But then again, these are the same people that valued yards allowed with Trayvon Diggs. And it's been 4 years since that season. I still don't know who's been number 1 in yards allowed because people aren't consistent with their narratives. So the narrative is, according to the people out there that didn't like Micah Parsons when he was on the Cowboys, I'm going to stick with your evaluation. He's a player who cannot play the run, and they paid him $47 million a year, and they gave up 2 first-round picks, and they gave up Kenny Clark to do it. I was told that run defense is so valuable. Let's keep that same energy. They traded for a defensive end that's not complete. I think that that's bogus, by the way, to be honest with you. I think that they traded for a really, really freaking good football player. Again, the best defensive player in football. I'm going to continue to say that because people like to misconstrue my words, because I am a Cowboys fan and I'll let people know this. And I will tell you, if I have that take while he's on the Cowboys, I'm going to have that take while he's on the Packers. Right? So best defensive player in football. Again, I'll say it again. But here's my thing, right? Green Bay, I'm not a believer in Jordan Love. I don't think they have the quarterback there. I don't think they have the guy that's going to get the job done for them. I don't love this offense. They don't have a number 1 receiver on this offense. I don't think their offensive line's that great. Josh Jacobs is an older running back. I mean, you talk about 2 first-round picks over the next 2 years here, right? Is Josh Jacobs going to play at the level you think he's going to play at over these next 2 years? And if he doesn't, I mean, look, the NFL is so crazy. The San Francisco 49ers went from a Super Bowl team to a 6-win football team in an offseason. In an offseason, they did. Again, like, you just never know what happens in the NFL. And that's why I think the Cowboys looked at this and they said, for so long, we are a top-heavy football team. And so what we're going to do is we're going to become less top-heavy. We are going to be able to sustain some of the injuries that we may get to our best players. And that's the way I look at this. Packers, they made a decision here. I don't think they were Micah Parsons away from being a Super Bowl contender. Does this make them better? Absolutely, no doubt about it. But like, I thought that they were probably like an 8 or 9 win team prior to this trade. Now they're probably like a 10, 11 win team. They play in a really good division. I think they were 1-5 last year in their division. And I think the Vikings are going to be really good this year. And you know, I'm not willing to go out on a limb and say for sure that you know the Vikings are going to be good, because JJ McCarthy, he is a question mark. And by the way, one thing that I did learn, Jordan Love and Micah Parsons have the same agent. Both of them are represented by David Mulgeta. So it makes sense that Micah Parsons found his way to Green Bay. But you have to ask yourself, was this the right move for Green Bay? Because everybody's going to tell you, all these reporters, Jordan Schultz and all these other guys that are friends with all these agents, they're such a joke, man. They're such a joke. Even though at every chance you get to carry the water for agents, you do that, Jordan Schultz. And here's the thing. I'm not Ian Rappaport, so if you want to see me at Starbucks, just know I'm not 5'8", 140 pounds like Ian Rappaport. Okay? Just letting you know that, because I really cannot stand that dude's content, because apparently you can throw a punch in a preseason game and Jordan Schultz will carry your water because your last name is Sanders. So just, putting that out there. But like Peter Schrager came out and said, hey, a lot of executives would do this trade. Peter Schrager is tapped in with executives. So it's funny to see the talking heads and the people across the NFL media. Jordan Schultz is an agent water carrier. We know this. If you know Jordan Schultz, you know that he carries the water for agents. Peter Schrager, he's the guy that's more tapped in with the front offices, which is why his mock drafts are so often correct, because of the fact that he knows a lot of these executives and they tell him a lot of information. He's tapped in. So the front offices are probably telling him, you'd be surprised how many people would take that deal. There's some general managers that would look at that and say, absolutely not, no chance in hell. There's some executives that would be like, maybe. It's just a lot to break down. And man, through another week here on the CEO Sports Show on Kretschman Media. I appreciate you guys for coming out. Loaded episode, but man, this was, I think, a fantastic episode. Got a lot of stuff off my chest with this episode. So please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. I'll greatly appreciate that. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Enjoy your Memorial Day. I'm going to be here on Monday. I'm off that day, but We're not on the bank schedule, so I'm going to be here on Monday. Love talking football, love talking sports in general, and I love doing it for you guys. So I will see you guys on Monday.